Okay, so this is the Juneau Gastineau Rotary session, which is now being recorded, and this is the session for Thursday, October 8th. And we're very pleased to welcome to our club today the three candidates who are running for state legislature here in Juneau: Ed King, Andy Story, and Sarah Hannon. So I'm going to now turn this over to John Wynn, who will moderate the session. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you for our candidates for being here. We have District 33 Democrat Sarah Hannon, the incumbent, District 34 Independent Ed King, and Democrat Andy Story, the incumbent. So welcome, and we look forward to the discussion this morning. All candidates were sent out the rules for this. They have 3 minutes to introduce themselves and state their positions. As a moderator, I will time you. At the end of the self-introductions, there'll be a question and answer period. So you'll have 1 minute to answer the questions asked of you, and I will also time those answers to those questions. And at the end, each candidate will have 2 minutes to wrap up their questions. So thank you for attending, and we look forward to this. And we'll start off with Sarah Hannon, 33rd District incumbent Democrat. Sarah? And Sarah said you had a problem with her video, so hopefully your audio is working.
Sarah, it looks like you might be trying to talk, but we can't hear you.
Now it's off mute.
She's off mute.
Well, it says I'm off.
Oh,
There
I
you go.
can hear you now. Go ahead.
Go
Okay.
Thanks, Sarah.
Double muted. Okay, good morning. Thank you for letting me visit you on the phone. My section in North Douglas, I've just not been able to keep enough bandwidth to show my face and hear my voice, so we've gone with voice this morning. I am the incumbent. I'm running for my second term. I have lived here in Juneau for about 34 years, retired from being a classroom teacher and failed at retiring, ran for office. And I promise not to use the word unprecedented, except for to say, from the beginning of being elected in 2018, the words around this first term has been hard and the problems have been complex and politics have been strange. Those phrases are used repeatedly. But the problems that we need to address that provoked me into running are still there. Alaska has a fiscal problem in that we do not generate enough revenue to meet the needs and demands of Alaska. From education to public safety to clean water, we are not meeting our needs financially to keep Alaskans safe and moving forward. And then in 2020, of course, we throw in a pandemic that really comes to the sectors of Alaska's economy pretty immediately, from tourism to oil to fisheries, because restaurants aren't open across the US. So all sectors of our economy in Alaska seem to have really taken a downturn this year. I've enjoyed the challenge of being a legislator, and that's why I chose to run again. Sometimes people ask if it's fun, and I would say that is not the modifier that I would ever use. It's not fun, but it is rewarding and it is challenging. And on a daily basis, helping people problem solve their immediate needs is very gratifying. And some of the bigger, longer term problems, like a solid fiscal plan, you're just continuing to try and find some resolution, because being an elected official in the legislative branch means you're on a team, and it's a team sport. And I feel like I've contributed and am seeking your support to do that for another term. And I'll end with that.
Thank you, Sarah. And next we have Ed King, Independent.
Thanks, John. And Thank you, President Doug, Rotarians, and honored guests, and thank you for hosting this event. And thank you for everything you do for our community. Raising $18,700 is great news, and I'm excited to see what you do with that money and how much good it'll do for the community. For me, I'm a professional economist. I'm also a small business owner. I understand how hard it is right here in the economy today, and I appreciate everything that you do to help that. I personally, I decided to run for state house because I want to help our economy get back on track. We're kind of off track right now, both in terms of dealing with this pandemic and dealing with our state's finances. Been battling this fight for many, many years and haven't been able to quite get it figured out quite yet. So I feel like I can contribute to that conversation and be a part of the winning team to get it across the finish line. We've been trying to deal with this problem for a long time, and it's too long. So as an analyst, as an economist, as a professional, I feel like I have something to contribute to the conversation. I just need to be in the room where those negotiations are happening. We've been draining our savings accounts to deal with the problem for many years. We've avoided dealing with the tough, difficult decisions that need to be made. Our savings accounts are empty now. We need to deal with those problems, the underlying root causes of those problems that we haven't dealt with quite yet. So it's time for us to roll up our sleeves and actually do the hard work that we haven't been able to do so far. I'm not running because this is going to be an easy or fun job. I'm running because it's going to be a difficult one, and tough decisions are going to have to be made. I'm no stranger to tough decisions or to stressful environments. I've served in the military. I was overseas in combat. I've been there before. I've been putting service before self my entire life. And I want to continue to do that through the legislative process these next 2 years. I led an infantry team for 4 years up here in Alaska at Fort Wainwright, and then I deployed overseas to defend our country and our freedom. And then when I got home to Alaska, I went to graduate school and got an advanced degree in applied economics from UAF. So I've really been understanding and appreciating the way that our state works for many, many years. And I've been working after I completed my my service to our government, our federal government, our country. I've been serving our state in various roles ever since. And so I was a policy analyst, a petroleum economist, a commercial analyst, a legislative liaison, a special advisor, an economic advisor, and then eventually my depth of understanding and my hard work led me to the appointment of the chief economist of the state. Now I'm looking to serve our state in a different way. I'm looking to serve us as a representative and carry the people's voices into the Capitol. And I'd appreciate your voice. I'd appreciate your vote. The decisions that we're going to make are really difficult, and the negotiations that are going to happen are going to be very challenging. And I want to be in the room where it happens.
Thanks, Ed. Andy Story, Democrat incumbent.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Andy Story. I've lived in Juneau for over 30 years, and I care deeply about our community, our state, and our future. It's really been an honor to serve as your Valley representative, and thank you all for being a welcoming capital city. I've seen up close how that matters, and thank you for testifying, emailing, and speaking up for what you value in state services. I bring experience. I serve on a number of important state house committees, including those that work on budgets. I'm committed to bipartisanship and have good relationships with lawmakers and contacts statewide. I'm a mom of 3 young adults, 2 who live here. My husband, Mike, is an engineer and a small business owner. I have my master's in social work. I'm running again because I want a stable and balanced state budget that prioritizes our quality of life. We have had to make a lot of cuts in state services, and we need people who will champion education, health, our seniors, the economy here. John asked us to talk a little bit about our platform in our introduction. I must say I will continue to value and work for all citizens. It's just key to pass the sustainable budget, a balanced budget that allows our economy to succeed. The public and private sectors need certainty to thrive. And we must protect the permanent fund and a dividend for future generations and stay within the sustainable draw of the fund. For every 1 billion over the sustainable draw, there is 50 million less in investment earnings, and it reduces the future earnings of the fund. In times where we are having trouble balancing our state budget, we cannot afford to lose future revenue. I'm going to work hard to continue to keep the capital, legislative sessions, and state jobs in Juneau. I support reliable, affordable ferry service. I'm putting people to work. We really need to pass a general obligation bond to support our deferred maintenance and capital projects. And we need to retain and attract employees by passing an affordable, updated, defined benefits retirement plan. We've got to keep addressing COVID-19 and our Alaska's health and economic well-being. And I believe we're going to get further federal assistance to citizens, and we need to do it as quickly as possible. And the last thing I'll say, there's so much we care about, but investing in education and health systems, healthy and educated Alaskans will lead to a prosperous Alaska. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, all the candidates. So now we'll move into the question and answer period. So who has the first question? Come on, Rotarians, don't be shy. Just go ahead. Doug?
Hey, so this is Doug Eklund. We had Senator Stedman on last week, and he talked about the ferry. And I've noticed that the president approved a railroad from Edmonton to Fairbanks, but I didn't see a spur off to Whitehorse. Has anybody thought about contacting the railroad and asking them why they're not dropping into Southeast Alaska, since our ferry system is in such turmoil?
And Andy, you want to start off?
Sure, Doug. I have not done that. It's an excellent idea. And that's one of the best things about this job is citizens reaching out and telling us the needs and things we should be checking out. And I very much will look into that, because you're right. We need, as the capital city, we need as much access as possible. And that's one thing we've worked really hard on doing. We've gotten more money for the ferry systems this year after, and it's been very painful. And so thank you for that suggestion.
And next, Ed King.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So a spur down to Whitehorse would be in Canadian territory the entire way. So I think it'd be really limited for our ability to really push that, other than for us to give advice to the government to say that that's something that we wanted. Getting supplies cheaper down to Whitehorse would definitely be an improvement, but as long as we still need to barge things in, as long as there's not road access to Juneau, those improvements would still not necessarily accrue to Juneau. So if we're going to talk about transportation systems, we need to talk about an integrated transportation system. We can't talk about any one part of the system without thinking about how it all ties together. So I think that a conversation around bringing a railroad to Whitehorse needs to also include a conversation around bringing a road to Sitka, so that those supplies can actually get to Juneau on a road system instead of on the water. The ferry system, of course, is very important as part of that. But it's still part of an integrated system that we need to talk holistically about.
Thanks, Ed. Sarah?
Thank you. It's an interesting question. And for those who don't know, that railroad approval is a private rail line that's been proposed to transport a few commodities. So right now, they actually don't anticipate building it with any passenger transport, and the reason it's going to Fairbanks is to tie into the existing rail line to be able to ship those commodities down to Seward, to a deep water port where they do want to transport out of. So some of those issues that we think would be great to use it for, it is a very specific private line to transport commodities that they're trying to get to a deep water port and cannot in British Columbia. So first it's got to be built. First, their commodities have to be profitable for the line to be built before they would anticipate expanding it to passenger and other freight services.
Thanks,
But
Sarah.
that's the way we think about them.
Next question.
Yeah,
James.
John. Thank you. Thank you all for coming this morning. Getting back to Bert, it was a great discussion. We every now and then we get insight in how the state politics are being handled, and Bert has, of course, experience. The one thing that kind of catching me up to how Southeast Alaska has changed over the years is we no longer have as much political clout compared to the rest of the state, just simply on population. And he brought up, well, a lot of the state, the importance of Southeast is determined on a very democratic process. We just don't have the votes. So how do you plan to go in and represent our coastal communities, which are not similar to Anchorage and Fairbanks or the Matsu Valley, and communicate the interest and of coastal communities, specifically in Southeast Alaska?
Sarah, I'll start with you. Can't hear you, Sarah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So it's not just Southeast that has lost population, and it's losing population in relation to where it's being gained, which is the Matsu Valley north of Anchorage has been the growing area of the state. So it is expected that all over Alaska, outside of that core and South Central, will lose some representation in the next redistricting to the Matsu Valley area. They're expected to gain a representative, but we'll see how the census turns out. And I think where Southeast Alaska's strength lies is aligning ourselves with the rest of coastal Alaska. And, that's Kodiak, parts of South Central, the Aleutian, Western Alaska, because we all have more similar needs where our goods are transported by water, where our communities depend on rural transportation, hubs, airports, some barge line in coastal Western Alaska. And so our alliances with those areas, we probably are more aligned with rural Alaskan communities than we are the urban hub of Anchorage, but we are also closely aligned with Fairbanks.
Thank you,
the
Sarah.
concentration of an economy.
Next, Ed King.
Great, thank you. An excellent question. I think Representative Hannan brings up some really good points about building alliances and relationships and making sure that you have the ability to communicate with people that are the ones that are making the decisions, because it only takes 21 votes to do anything in the House. And you have to be aligned with those other 20 people if you're going to have any clout. It doesn't matter how loud you scream. It doesn't matter how impactful you are within the minority. If you're not resonating, if you don't have credibility, and if you don't have pull with the votes that are actually going to get you across the finish line, it's not going to happen. And it doesn't take 40 people to get anything done. It takes 21 people to get things done. That's why I think it's really important that you have relationships with people from Anchorage, with people from the Matsu Valley, and with the coastal community, and with the interior, and with the rural pockets, to understand and can work with everyone, like I've been doing for the last 4 years, and building those relationships. And having a relationship on the third floor, so that when you do have priorities, you can make those priorities known to people that are actually going to vote for them. That's what I think. That's how you actually get things done in politics, is you build those relationships, you build those alliances, and you do the things that I've been doing for Juneau for the last 4 years.
Thanks, Ed. Andy?
I would say that we are having to do this already, make alliances. We've done several joint letters with legislators from all parts of the state, and like Rep. Hannan says, coastal Alaska, working with Fairbanks has been critical, and being part of a bipartisan coalition. We're looking at what our goals are for Alaska, and the focus on the budget really brought our bipartisan coalition together last year, its principles. And so we'll keep focusing on what's good for Alaskans. And those linkages are there. I think it's part of representing the capital city. I have worked so hard to make everyone feel welcome, from the governor to staff to representatives across the state. And I feel good about the relationships we have, and will continue to do it. It's relationships, 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 and our principles.
Thank you, Andy. And for those Rotarians who have a question, just go ahead and ask, go ahead and say, John, I have a question, because I can't see the whole screen. I see 25 at a time. So
Yeah, John, I've got one if you
Okay,
don't mind.
go ahead, Matt. Oh, Milo?
Yeah, it's Milo. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess it's about prospects for doing something about the fiscal situation. The state's fiscal situation has been deteriorating for about 10 years or more, and nobody seems to be able to confront it. With the result of the latest primaries, some of the people in the legislature that were still able to do math don't look like they're going to be able to return. And all three of you are fairly sensible about budgets and understand math and understand what it would take to get a balanced budget. I'm wondering how you're going to, or what your strategy is for dealing with a bunch of colleagues that really have made some unrealistic promises and don't seem to understand the issues.
We'll start with Ed, and after Ed, we'll go to Andy, then Sarah. Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I've already been talking with a lot of those people already this year, just since that election, and building those relationships and helping them understand the reality of our situation and building credibility as a budget expert so that they are listening to what I have to say and they can do the math. And I pointed out to them, when somebody proposes that we can't cut the PFD and that we can't cut the budget and that we can't raise taxes, there's nothing left. The math doesn't work. There's only 4 variables, right? Savings, taxes, budget cuts, and PFD. If you take 3 of them away, you're saying that all of the impact is going to happen to the other one. That's how the math works. So when I hear somebody say, we're going to protect the PFD, we're not going to cut the budget, and we're not going to spend anything out of the earnings reserve, what I hear is we're going to pass $10,000 per household taxes. When I hear somebody say that we're going to not raise taxes, we're going to not touch the earnings reserve, and we're not going to touch the PFD, then what they're saying is they're going to cut $2 billion out of the budget. Those are not realistic. And I can't stand it when I hear people, even elected representatives today, or some of the candidates that don't really understand the situation, they don't know how to do the math. And it really, really bothers me. So I am building that credibility and helping that conversation, regardless of whether I win this election.
Thanks, Ed. Andy, next.
Thanks. One of the things that I think is critically important, again, and I can't say it enough, it's relationships, relationships, relationships. And also in what I've learned in politics, is we don't know who's going to be representing us after this primary session. I have been hearing a lot of talk from different regions. Citizens are concerned. They are smart. They know when people have an unrealistic budget situation. And even if people are elected who tend to see the budget and don't understand how limited our resources are right now, I believe their citizens are going to step up and help them get to a better spot. But on the same time, you have to realize that there are some people, really strong people who are coming back, and they know that we cannot deliver on a full PFD and keep this state healthy. And so I think it's really important to send people there who realize that and who have the, thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Sarah?
Yes, I'll echo the 2 who've spoken previously, and that the numbers don't add up. And I believe that there are candidates running who maybe haven't looked into the details to understand all the components that go into making up a fiscal plan have to be considered. But, someone like Senator Stedman, who perhaps he and I don't agree on many social policies, probably are very aligned in the goal to make sure we preserve our biggest economic strength. And for the last 3 years, the draw on the permanent fund, the POMV contribution to our annual operating costs, is the biggest revenue stream for the state. So when we start talking about taking money out of parts of the permanent fund, reducing our investment earnings, we lose its power to us to continue to fund us. So it will be a struggle, and it takes time to do the math with people who haven't spent their time focused on it.
Thank you, Sarah. And who has the next question? We have time for one more question and answer before the 2-minute wrap up. Someone speak up.
This is Brian. I have a question.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I'd like to hear some comments about education. We have a state that is the lowest number of college attainment rates in the U.S., and we haven't been supporting our schools, and we have a budget crisis. But where does education spending fit on your priorities? Thank you.
Andy, go ahead. We'll go Andy, Ed, and then Sarah.
As many of you know, Brian, you know, education is top priority from me. And it is for businesses that I've talked to. It's for parents, people who want to live in Juneau, stay in Juneau, education. And our university system, they're just an economic engine. And so part of my fiscal plan is it has to include making strategic investments. And education is that investment. I introduced a bill this year, was at House Finance when our session ended, which inflation-proofed our permanent fund. Right now, the rhetoric on this, we have to look to the data and facts, and ICER says we are 50%, we're about in the middle of the states for what we fund because we have not been increasing our budgets. Their budgets are high, just like every state in the union. That's their number one priority is education. It's one of the highest state budgets. And so linking it to how it meets the future of our workforce needs is really critical. I'm thrilled Pat Pitney is up at the university, and I see that people value kids, and why I want to be up there though is everyone says they value education, but
Thank you, Andy.
the funding, they need a push. I want to be there to make that push.
Ed.
Thanks, Sean. So public education is absolutely important to me. Regardless of what the numbers say or what the statistics are, that's not what really matters. What really matters is whether our kids are getting what they need to support themselves, to be raised into a way that they can be the best opportunities possible. I know for me, without public education, I would probably be in jail right now. I probably would have starved to death because I wouldn't have got fed by the free school lunch program growing up. I wouldn't have had any safe place to go as I was growing up as a child. And public education is so much more than just education, and it's so much more than just putting money into it to see, to make sure that we have it fully funded. It's so much more than that. It's about getting results, and we're not getting results. Regardless of how much money that we put at it, we have to demand more. We have to make sure that there's accountability. I'm raising 4 kids in our public school system. I went through the public school system. I graduated from 2 public universities. I've been through it. I know how important it is. And I think that we need to demand more for what we're spending. I think we're completely failing our kids right now, and we need to do more about it.
Thanks, Ed. Sarah?
Well, as Brian knows, I spent a career in the classroom here in Juneau, and I remain a strong advocate for public education. As opposed to the candidate who spoke before me, though, I don't think that we are failing our kids in schools. I think schools reflect the complex social problems that we have across Alaska, where we are leading the nation in all the measurable social ills, from child abuse, child neglect, sexual assault. And when I first went into education, the phrase adverse childhood experiences didn't exist. But what we know is those frame so many things that schools need to deal with. And as long as we talk about the cost of doing things in Alaska, schools hit the measure. We have high health costs, and every school district, it's a major increment of increasing costs to deliver to their personnel. They have crumbling infrastructure, and that's a factor in being able to deliver a safe school environment. So public education will be one of the focuses of budget attacks.
Thank you,
And
Sarah.
you have my word that we'll continue to defend it.
I was incorrect. We have time for one more question. So who has a question? Someone speak up. Don't be shy.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I've heard a lot about about all these different options, but one thing that I believe is certainly going to have to happen as part of it is, again, cutting the budget. And I've heard so far not one of you talk about what part of the budget you're going to cut. I would like to have that addressed, please. Thank you.
Sarah, we'll start with you.
I do not have places in the budget that I want to see cut. I want to talk about revenue generation to meet the needs we have. I don't think the two biggest pots of money remaining in the state of where we allocate our budget are both education and healthcare. And I don't think those are areas where if we cut them, we still meet the needs of Alaskans. Now, with that said, the phrase everything's on the table, and I'm not sure whether, I don't believe our ferry system can take more cuts. I'm not sure our road maintenance across the state and airport maintenance can take more cuts. But the place we've taken the money from the last 4 years is permanent fund dividends. I'm not sure the populace can tolerate more taking of that. So unless we are willing to talk about revenue, we are stuck with tit for tat dollar increments to cut down, and we can't cut $2 billion out of this budget.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, Ed King.
Yeah, so I think Representative Hanna is correct in that we can't cut $2 billion out of the budget. So budget cuts as the only solution are absolutely not the answer, but that doesn't mean that it's not part of the solution. And there's one really easy way that we can cut the budget without cutting any services, and that's just rearranging our balance sheet so that we pay off some of our debts. We can get rid of about $300 to $400 million without changing any services whatsoever, just by holding our money in one account versus another. That's something we should be talking about. With this whole experience with the pandemic, we've all experienced working from home. Maybe that's an opportunity for us to find efficiencies and reduce our overhead. Maybe we don't need as much lease space as that we need to. That's probably millions of dollars of savings. There's a lot of other things that we can look at, not cutting services, not cutting the budget, but finding better ways to deliver those services at a lower cost. That's what we really need to be focusing on. And then just making sure that we're doing everything that we need to be doing in the most effective way possible. I think that that's something that we haven't. And then finally, we just need to prioritize. We need to go through the same process that CBJ went through just a few years ago. Figure out what our priorities are so that when those conversations around cuts start to happen, we can address it intelligently rather than everybody defending their little silos and their little districts. We can have an intelligent conversation about what we as Alaskans
Thanks,
want.
Ed. Andy?
Yes, I think the most important thing we want to do is look for efficiencies. We carefully, strategically cut 200 million our first year, but as we know, the deficit is deep. There are things we can do that I think is just smart. The school district, with all our facilities, we did energy. We partnered with a firm and did energy efficiencies, which have really saved us a couple $2 million, which is more money. But we have made, as you all know, living in the capital city, we have cut thousands of state positions, thousands of services, and we're at a point where we do need to have everything on the table. We need to look at revenue because people, when we did try, the governor did try slashing services, and that was, it brought the bipartisan coalition together because we wanted to protect essential services. That's what makes for a quality of life. That's what families want to see. That's what businesses want to see. So we're going to really have to look at efficiencies and look at revenue sources. We want to protect the permanent fund.
Andy?
Thank you.
Now each candidate has 2 minutes to wrap up. And we'll start with Sarah. So go ahead, Sarah.
Well, thank you for your time and your focus on community this morning. And I hope I have your support in seeking re-election. It's going to be a hard session legislatively, and we know Alaska's economy will be the focus of it. We all need to cooperate together and presume goodwill, even from those who talk about things like moving the budget or closing public schools. We need to assume goodwill, that all of us are working together to pursue the best for Alaska and some long-term solutions to our complex problems. The most important thing is to remember to vote. The local election seems to be a great example that the early indicators are that we are going to have about 40% of Juneauites participating in our local election. And increasing the participation in democracy is a hard thing to do, but in the end, gets more voices to participate. So Rotarians, by definition, you're already participating in local activities, local government commitment. So thank you for your efforts to do that. And I look forward to working with you all over the next 2 years.
You still have 45 seconds if you want to say some more, Sarah.
Nope, that's enough. I need more coffee.
Thank you. Ed, go ahead.
Thanks, John. And thank you again, everybody, for participating this morning and for being here and for inviting us to participate in your meeting. I really appreciate it. Just a couple of things that I would point out or I want to hit on about myself. Like I said, I've spent the last several years studying the state's finances from many different perspectives, everything from a policy analyst and forecaster within the Department of Revenue to a commercial analyst, understanding what it takes to actually get a project to get developed on the North Slope and dealing with our lease issues, working on the gas line with the governor, getting promoted to the economic advisor in Governor Walker's administration, and really dealing with the legislature, getting bills passed, carrying legislation in the Capitol, talking about getting really familiar with all of our state statutes in all of the revenue generation and all of the budget issues, working with the governor's office and the Office of Management and Budget on the budget issues. I've been in the statutes. I've seen how laws get made. I've seen how they get interpreted, and I've even seen how they've been misinterpreted many times. I understand the system. I understand the way that we can get to where we are to where we want to be. I don't think that we've been on the path to get us to success. And I don't think that continuing to talk about those same things that haven't worked in the past are going to get us to where we want to be. We're going to have to do something different. And it's going to have to be putting somebody in the room that can speak intelligently and understand all of the different issues, all of the moving pieces, put them in the room with other people and help educate them on what's workable, what's achievable, and what will lead us to success. Just going along with the party is not going to get us anywhere where we want to be. We need to do something different. We need to completely flip the way that we address the budget in the first place. We need to stop talking about revenues first, stop thinking about revenue maximization, start thinking about what we need as a state, what we want as a state, what we're willing to pay for, and how we're willing to pay for it. We need to tear down all of the walls and silos and all of the different conversation pieces that just make things more complicated and more convoluted and less transparent. We need to go back and revisit all of those things and look at new ways to approach old problems that haven't been solved in the past. My fresh take, my approach would be able to do that. Thank you, John.
Andy.
Thank you for having all of us today and for all that you guys do in our community. It's really so important. I have the experience, commitment, and compassion to do this job best. This is my 17th year as an elected official, including my 2 years as a legislator. I understand the system. I know what's required to make things happen. The importance of relationships, focus, hard work, and advocacy. That's what brought the bipartisan coalition together, is focusing on protecting essential services and having a healthy state. I listen to all citizens and I value their perspectives, and I worked hard to be in places where I can address their priorities. It's often behind the scenes. That's how you get results. I'm a proven leader and known for being willing to work across the aisle with all legislators. I'm pleased that the bill that I sponsored, a veterans bill, House Bill 71, was signed into the law by the governor this spring to help veterans get jobs. I'm familiar with public and private sector business needs, as my husband is a longtime small business owner. And as a parent of young adults, and as just caring so much about our community, there's nothing more I want than for us to have a quality of life here. And there are key areas that we just have to protect to be a stellar state. And one of them is the permanent fund, our sovereign wealth fund. It is doing what, it's the crown jewel of government policy. We are now living off a non-renewable resource and it's made it renewable. So I will work really hard to protect that. I will work really hard to protect education in our university system. I know the challenges and the strengths needed to improve our education system. I really think that children and us as adults, because we all will be retooling and our family members will, our job skills for future work. And we really need to not cut critical services. Having a balance. Was that 3 minutes? Okay.
That's 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to thank Representative Sarah Hannon, Ed King, and Representative Andy Story, and fellow Rotarians for asking the questions today. And the voting is in a few weeks for or absentee votes. So I know the Rotarians will get out there and vote. Thank you. Turn it back to you, Doug.